Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of All Things Money. And today we have a very special guest, who is the CEO of the National Disaster and Risk Management Fund. How are you doing, sir?
Doing very well. Thank you for the
It's
invitation.
just, it's just fascinating to see how the critical work that NDRMF is supposed to do. So, can you just tell us what it really is the mandate of NDRMF and how you were going about it?
So the institution was established in 2016. It became operational in 2018. The mandate of NDRMF was related to disaster risk reduction, climate adaptation, and building the fiscal resilience against the different types of disaster which Pakistan is exposed to and right now is actually facing. So our mandate was very specific in that context. We were not supposed to be related or working on anything which is post-disaster, relief for or humanitarian work. Our mandate is to reduce the risks of disasters, and that's what we are focused so far.
So how do you do that? What is the data that you're essentially looking at? Now, it's a classic risk management role. What kind of data are you looking at? What are the metrics that you're looking at? How do you go about that? Okay, this is a high risk area. This is a low risk area. These are the disasters that I will supposed to focus on. What's the process like?
In the case of Pakistan, Pakistan is an extremely disaster-prone country. And so we happen to be locating at a geographical location where we are exposed to so many different types of disasters. And that's the reason that, floods, earthquakes, heat waves, cyclones, and these are the different kind of disasters. And these all actually falls into our mandate. So what we specifically look into it, the data is very actually clear that because of our glaciers and our water system, the flood is a very obvious one, which has been actually attracting our attention since the day we starting our operations. So far, from 2000 onwards, all disaster-related damages which Pakistan has faced, 90% has been flood-related. So in that context, it's very clear for us to focus ourselves on the disaster, on the floods. But nevertheless, we've been actually focusing on other areas as well, and which is the drought, which is the heat waves and the cyclones and those other types of disasters as well. But flood management, flood protection, and early warning systems, and these are the typical classical kind of the areas in which we have been largely focused in our response.
So in the case of floods, we know that the severity is very high and the frequency is also very high considering whatever was happening in the last 20, 25 years. Now, what tangible or concrete steps have been taken to ensure that the disaster or the damage due to floods has been reduced? And is there a way to monitor this? What has NDRMF done for that?
Yeah, so I think one thing need to be very much clarified is that Pakistan is going to be facing the floods of different magnitudes. And that's because of our water management, and that's because of the glaciers and the source of the water which actually we're receiving. So this is a blessing, and it needs to be managed. But then we get a lot of water sometimes in a very short span of time. So this is basically the context of floods in which Pakistan has been facing and is going to be facing actually in the future as well. Now, against this background, what we can do, and just remember that our mandate is disaster risk reduction, which basically means is minimizing the impact of the disasters, because we just cannot eliminate it completely. So the majority of our work has been actually focused on the flood protection measures, and we have done that in some of the most remote as well as the vulnerable areas within Pakistan. Now, the associated work, which is again affiliated with the flood management, is the establishing early warning systems for localized early warning system for those areas which are extremely vulnerable, extremely prone to the different flood risks. Other than that, we've been actually strengthening the rescue services as well. And this all work we have been actually doing through the engagement of the community. So empowering the community through our community-based risk management practices, which we have actually hailed, we have initiated, and have really mastered ourselves in those particular areas. So a lot of flood protection, early dams, check dams, cascading dams, flood protection measures, early warning systems, strengthening of the rescue 1122 services, and then empowering the communities. So this is the.
So can you give me us a tangible example of some project, something that was done that actually reduced the impact of floods in a community in a specific area?
Yeah, I mean, there are several. And I mean, the one particular right now, or the few particular right now, is many of our flood protection measures which we have done in KPK or in Gilgit-Baltistan as part of our earlier work since 2018 when we started that. So those many of those flood protection measures have actually guarded the communities over there. So in case some communities we have built the Gambian walls or flood protection walls, or we have done the small dams which basically channelize the water out of the communities. We have done in Balochistan, especially in Gilgit-Baltistan, and similarly in other areas as well. And the one is we have done in Sindh, especially in the rural Sindh areas as well. One particular measures which is a little bit kind of a sizable as well, and this is the work which actually we done after flood 2022, and this was part of the portfolio of the work which we done undertaken as a kind of a reconstruction and rebuilding of the flood protections which were earlier there, but they were heavily damages after the flood 2022. So one particular project of NDRMF have actually saved not only the communities in Sindh, but that have actually saved the Mohenjo-daro historical sites as well. So it has not actually protected the communities, but it has protected the historical sites, the heritage sites, and which of course is one of the treasure of Pakistan as well. And similarly, early warning systems in Gilgit-Baltistan and rescue 1122 services in KPK. In the recent flood in Bunair and Swat areas, so many of the rescue 1122 services in the case of ambulances and cranes and number of others, those were actually provided by NDRMF after the flood 2022.
We're talking about Sindh. What was the specific project?
The Sindh project, which I'm talking about, this is a flood protection. So this is out on the river Sindh, Indus River, and this has actually looking at the maneuvering of the river, and we have actually built the flood protection walls, and which have actually protected the communities and protected those heritage sites.
So how do those walls work? Are there specific areas where we build those walls? And if we build those walls, why can't we build more of them to reduce the damage?
Well, so these are the engineered sites, and so this is very specific engineered work. The walls cannot be built everywhere. Because there is this kind of understanding that we basically have to let the river flow to the extent possible. But when, of course, there are communities and there is agricultural land, or there is other kind of assets which need to be protected, then of course these kind of structured engineered projects or the measures, those need to be. So there's a lot of assessment work, evaluation work which needed to be undertaken as a pre-assessment before those walls are built, and then looking at the long-term maneuvering of the river and how the river is going to be behaving in the next 10, 15, 20 or 30 or 50 years time, and then whether these kind of walls or the embankments can be built. And that basically guide us where these should be built, and how far they are going to be effective and efficient, and without actually affecting or negatively affecting the flow of the river and the ecological value of the river as well. That's extremely important as well. Now, one of the since your question is very specifically related to it, because these the assessment and the suitability of these engineering measures, they are based on a very data heavy assessments, and for that purpose we have actually established the natural catastrophic model, the NetCAT model, which basically we run the modeling for the next 30, 40, 50 or even up to 100 years as well, and it model out and it gives us scientific based results for this purpose.
What are those models again? What do they specifically do?
So this is the NetCAT is a first of its kind in Pakistan. Actually, it's first of its kind in many countries. Actually, there's only a handful of the countries around the world which have such a comprehensive system. So NetCAT has been designed as a risk modeling system. What it does is based on the data of specific rivers as well as the other measures as well, and then it look into the different kinds of assets and then incorporates the regional climate models, and based on that, very specific and scientific modeling applications have been integrated into it. So they basically keep on looking in a real-time basis, or not in the real-time basis, but it basically look into the lot of data which is there as stored there, but then taking the information from the climate models, looking into the different kind of disasters which had happened in the recent history, and then model it out how the future looks like and what kind of impact we should be expecting. And we have actually calculated, and we have attached one other very specific applications. It actually does the loss estimation against the different kind of disasters as well.
All right, this makes sense. So, talking about early warning systems, yes, we got in let's say KP. What early warning systems are in place there, and how did they work out in the recent floods?
So I think one thing is which actually got surfaced out very clearly in the recent floods is that there's a lack of kind of early warning systems in the country, and there are early warning systems, there are localized systems as well, and the other institutions have their own systems in place as well, and and they do work actually, because in NDRMF we know it because we have been actually establishing these systems. We have an experience, expertise in doing so, and several of our established installed early warning systems have actually worked, and they have alarmed and warranted the communities, and they were able to save themselves. But in the KPK, particularly this particular flood, what happened was, this is something which we in the climate change kind of a scenario, this is pretty unprecedented, because those were the cloudbursts. And then the cloudbursts happen. I mean, we all know what is a cloudburst because this has been in the news in the recent past so much. So the cloudbursts, a lot of water actually pours in an extremely short span of time, and then it caused that kind of a downflow of the debris and the boulders and very heavy stones, and those are the stones actually which have caused a lot of damage. Now, because it was happening in such a short span of time, so most of the early warning systems, they were not actually calibrated and designed for this kind of disaster, and this is why this is called unprecedented in nature. The technologies are available internationally, and for our future work, and this is what we are thinking in NDRMF as well. The future work, we have to recalibrate and got our early warning system to be redesigned in a way they can actually capture these kind of situations as well. But we're passing through a kind of unprecedented age of climate change. There are new risks which are arising in a kind of we're not talking about on a decades, we're talking about on a yearly or monthly basis. In our particular case in Pakistan, that is on a monsoon to monsoon basis, which is an incredibly short period of time. Any tangible work, any tangible kind of measures needed to be done, of course they need more time, and it's a very short span of time. So I think this has actually given us quite a shock in terms of whatever early warning systems, and we're not talking about one instrument, or we're not talking about one kind of sensors, we're talking about integrated system, and those integrated systems need to capture quite a different kind of data, and that data need to be integrated, interplay in such a manner that it can actually work out the risks which are out there. So this is what we are actually working as well.
So that's interesting. Most of the early warning signals were actually for floods, where glaciers are melting, so on and so forth. But this time around, it was more of a cloudburst.
Yes.
So, what new measures do you think should be in place to mitigate the risk of cloudburst going forward? What would be the early warning signals in that case?
I think so. Early warning signals is in this particular case, in the case of the cloudburst, because when the flow of the water is so intense and so fast, it gives a very short span of time for any kind of a tangible, any kind of a concrete measures to the communities or to the government agencies. So this is a scenario which we are actually have in hand right now, and the cloudburst can happen actually. And this time as well, we have seen the cloudburst actually happening in a very different locations, seemingly not interconnected locations as well. We have seen in Bonaire, we've seen in Swat, and then we have seen in Chakwal as well. And so there's a lot of R&D work which needed to be done, that what weather parameters and the systems were actually interacting and interplaying with each other, which have caused these kind of very unprecedented weather patterns, weather scenarios. Now, in that case, I think the technologies are there which basically start actually looking and sensing that in terms of the precipitation, in terms of temperature and humidity, and number of other parameters, they can actually judge that, they can actually sense that. And then based on the statistical modeling and some of the other technologies and techniques which are there, they need to actually make the warnings. So in some cases, those warnings might not be credible, but still, I think it's much better to have those kind of warnings. And then the government agencies and the other agencies and the people actually can become aware of it, and they can start taking the measures. I'm sure that the technological agencies internationally as well as in the region, they're going to look into that, and they're going to sharpen up their own technologies as well. They will come up with a sensor which are a lot more smarter, and they are able to collect a lot more other parameters. And I think this is what is needed very much.
So in terms of, early warning signals are all about having the right infrastructure, the right models, the right tools or sensors in place so that necessary warning can be provided to the communities, so on and so forth. What kind of a capital expenditure or budget are we looking at, and is NDRMF even equipped for that?
These are capital intensive measures. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Especially if we want to equip ourselves to the international standards, which I'm not too sure, but I think WMO, this is a World Meteorological Organization, they suggest that having a automatic weather station every 40 kilometers, and that's spread across the country. If we want to reach that kind of standard, and so of course there's a lot of capital which is needed, but there are ways of doing that. I mean, there are areas which of course are a lot more exposed, and then a vast area for Pakistan is not as vulnerable. There's no population, there are no assets or anything. So I think it can be done in a piecemeal manner. But those areas which are dense in population, which are have the assets, and those are exposed assets, I think those need to be prioritized. So capital intensity, of course, is a big challenge. And I don't know. I don't have a figure with me that. What kind of dollar value which are looking to reach to that level, but this is going to be capital intensive. Now, NDRMF, of course, is kind of mobilizing the support, and again, we are going to be focused and prioritizing those areas which are vulnerable, particularly vulnerable, and which are particularly exposed. So we have the data with the NetCAT in fully functional. We can actually identify the hotspots. In terms of from the weather patterns and the weather climate change models, which are the areas which are going to be exposed in the coming year or 2 or 10 or 15 years. And then we can look into those areas which are a lot more dense, and there's a lot of population. And we are actually preparing ourselves to identify those areas first of all, provide this information to the relevant government agencies as well, that there is a culture of, there is a kind of a sense of scientific base and data base, kind of a, not only the policy making, but the investments can be made as well. So this is something which we are doing. So we're providing this information to the relevant agencies, and we are actually taking this information to the donor agencies and mobilizing the support for our work as well.
So, let's say we've got a clean slate, and we say to ensure that Pakistan, in terms of disaster preparedness, in terms of having early warning signals in place, what kind of a budget are we looking at? It's like, matlab, like the ultimate goal, having the right infrastructure in place, having the right tools in place, having the right teams in place. What are we looking at? How much would all of this cost?
We're talking about in hundreds of millions of dollars. That's one thing. That's the installation. And then installation is not the only thing. The maintenance is another one. Operations is another one. So, and then the other thing is we're not only talking about the equipments or the tools or the sensors or the computational capacity. We're talking about the human resources as well. We're talking about having the infrastructure at different places in the country, and those who can actually collect the data, they can collect the data, and that this can actually pass down to the relevant people. So we are definitely talking about, in terms of the installation, hundreds of millions of dollars, and then similarly for keep them running, operational, maintained, calibrated, in good order. Again, there is going to be few $1 million to keep them in function. So it is capital intensive job. But then, if you look how much these kind of measures they save in terms of damages, human lives, livelihood loss, then this whole figure actually looks minuscule.
Exactly. So how do we go towards that? How do we get to a point that it's taken seriously enough that there is necessary allocation, there's private sector allocation, there is some co-financing? What should be the way forward?
I think everything which you mentioned, there is no one solution. There's the government agencies who have a kind of a specific mandate for that. I think those government agencies should be provided the financing, and that financing can come from the government resources, but there are donors, there are partners who are actually willing to come forward in order to support and help us. Secondly, I think that there is a role for the private sector as well. Now, the data is the new commodity, and what these old sensors, all these equipment, what they do is they collect data. That's the first thing they do. Now, analytical, drawing the results out of it, building the modeling applications, that comes later. And everything is actually can be commoditized as well. There is something, of course, for the government, for the policy making, for the warning systems, for the investment purposes, of course, that had to be provided to the government agencies, or even for research and development purposes for the students and academia, without any cost. But when there's a lot of usability and utilization of this information for the private sector, and this is where this can be actually commercialized. And that actually going to be helping the government and the relevant agencies to actually reduce the maintenance and operationalization costs as well.
I think that's a great idea because essentially you commoditize it, you commercialize it, and you reduce the overall financing requirement through that, and at least ensure that the necessary sustenance of the entity can run. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So, Bilal Sahab, just a few more things. What would be NDRMF's biggest priorities for the next 3 years?
So the one thing which we have learned in Pakistan is Pakistan is disaster prone. I'm repeating myself, but I think this is a fact. And what also is happening is whenever a disaster strikes, almost all the damages and the losses, they basically are supported or borne by the government agencies. Or the people on the ground by themselves. Those people who have lost their houses, they might not actually get rebuilt for a long period of time. Public asset, this goes to the government books. So there is this, the losses and the damages, they are always on the public fundings, on the public finances. So NDRMF have actually come up with a new mechanism, and it's relatively new in Pakistan, but in other countries that model has been successfully implemented. So technically what is called is that to pass on some of the risks from the government to the private sector, and through different kind of financial instruments which have been successfully implemented in many other places. So disaster risk insurance is one such area in which NDRMF is right now is very heavily and rightfully focused right now. So in the next 3 years, what we want to do, and now we have the NetCAT, because NetCAT actually support in basically quantifying the risks and come up with the damages and the losses. in a more quantifiable, in a scientific basis as well. This actually provides us a very powerful basis to come up with the risk transfer mechanisms. And those risk transfer mechanisms can be taken up with the private sector, by the private sector, and they can actually design the products and services to offer the insurance to different people, to different investors. So this is something which we are actually trying to do very, very hard, and we want the insurance industry to come forward, and they actually start on a pilot basis. For example, the crop insurance. Whenever a flood happens or a cyclone happens, the small farmers, they lose their crops, and it takes about 3 to 4 years. There are a lot of studies basically show that 3 to 4 years for them to actually come back into the economic kind of equation, and they can actually recrop themselves again. So what we are actually proposing and actually coming up with the system is that there is an insurance mechanism in place. Whenever such a disaster strikes, there is a support available, not through the government, but by the government actually subsidize some of the premium paying, and the rest is by the farmers themselves or by the international donors. And then in a kind of immediate fashion, in the aftermath of a disaster, these farmers are provided the financial assistance in a rapid fashion, and they basically allow them not to fall into the poverty trap again. Many of them are already there, and then it's basically provide them the economic means, and they can stand up, they can start recropping at the next cropping season without losing too much of the time. So this is our biggest focus right now. We want to bring a insurance mechanism into place. Starting with the crop insurance, we want to go to the public asset insurance, and similarly into the other areas as well. We believe that this is going to be quite a contribution, quite a huge achievement for NDRMF. Once contribution to the government as well, it reduces the impact on the public financing, and then help the private sector, help the insurance industry to grow in Pakistan as well, which still is at a very, very early stages.
That's fair. So how do you go about that? Like, I understand, we can do crop insurance, and they can be insurance companies come and do that. They'll get themselves reinsured. How do you do that? There is clearly market failure when it comes to agri insurance. What can NDRMF do differently, or what kind of support NDRMF can provide that such a market failure can be solved?
Yeah, so there is a market failure. You're absolutely right, and the failure happened because of a couple of reasons. The one is that the insurance industry did not have the capacity to actually quantify the risks. Now we have actually filled that knowledge gap with the NetCAT. Now the NetCAT actually provide them the basis, and they can come up with the risk premiums which are suitable for this country. They are not based on regional models. They are based on Pakistan. Exactly the situation in Pakistan. So that's one thing. We have already addressed that big knowledge gap, and the insurance industry is extremely pleased about that, and they are actually working on that. So this is something which you have actually done differently and quite successfully as well. Now the second is where the insurance industry has failed largely is the losses. And it became a kind of an uphill task to come up with the losses after a flood or a cyclone or anything like this. Insurance agents has to go, and they have to visit the area, they have to do the damage assessment. Now, what we are saying is this is no-go, and this has to be done through the technology as well. And so through the satellite data, we can actually come up with the losses, and which provide us quite a credible kind of information. That's another area. Through the technology, with the minimum least human intervention, we can actually do it. With the least human intervention, the element of unfairness and wrong assessment, that is also eliminated. So that's a big kind of a relief for the insurance industry as well. Now the third one is how to distribute the cash once it's actually assessed, and then how to distribute that. For that, we are very much determined to utilize the existing channels for distribution and reaching out. Now the data is already available. lot of data is available with us. There's a data available with the other agencies as well, and they have under the social protection and cash distribution systems. Others, they have already established a mechanism where in a kind of a very rapid fashion, the cash disbursement can happen. For that, we are actually relying on them. So the mechanism is going to be working like this, that the insurance, we come up, we provide this ecosystem and the guidelines, they come up with the different insurance products. We actually asking and working with the government hand in hand to come up with insurance mechanism, subsidize the premium setting through the means from the international donors who are very keen to work on this mechanism. And then some of the subsidy is provided by the government, and the rest is, of course, by a little bit of by the farmers themselves, because they see the protection. And let's say the scheme is being designed in a way that number of years no disaster actually strikes, so the risk, the premium is paid. That's not really gone in vain. That's not wasted. That actually goes back. Part of it is retained by the insurance sector or the industry as part of the administrative charge, and a little bit of the profitability. Of course, they need to keep them afloat, but the rest is actually going back as part of the contribution for the next year premium as well. So this is a kind of a rolling premium. Part of the rolling, substantial part of the premium is actually rolled to the next year and the next year's number. So this is going to be minimum burden of the government as well as the other donors who want to participate into it. But then the farmer or anyone who is insured remains protected for all the times and against the different kind of disasters. So this is not being done in Pakistan so far. This is the first time it's being rolled out in this fashion.
This is very fascinating. So just one final thing, because something very close to what we want to do. How does one get access to the NetCAT model?
So NetCAT model is open, it's accessible, and the basic features of NetCAT are available through NDRMF's website. Anyone can go, can log in, and can see the system, can play around with the system. Anyone who wants to go deeper and actually want to seek some very specialized results, they just need to send an email to, and there's a dedicated email there. They need to send an email, and we are going to be creating a login for that person or institution, and then we actually set the access rights, how deeper, and they can actually go into the system and they can get that result. So it's very easy. It's nothing paper based. Everything is web based. And most of the cases, especially when students are writing their thesis or they're doing their R&D work, is open for them, and they are finding it extremely useful. For many agencies, international agencies, government agencies, when they want very specialized risk maps or risk assessment reports, they actually provide us the information, and we actually run the model for them, and we generate the reports and send it over to them. But we create their profiles as well. And we've been actually providing the training to a lot of institutions in the private sector as well as in the government sector, how to use this system.
And this is fascinating, and I think more financial institutions and other entities should actually look into this, and maybe more work needs to be done to really tell people what this is. So as people have more knowledge, as more information goes about, definitely a lot more risk appetite increases, because now you can understand, you can assess things and just price it accordingly. Thank you, Bilal. It was a really informative discussion with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you were able to understand what disaster risk management is all about. Till next time. Bye.